This next panel is just that, elevating the playing field, and it's going to be led by one of my favorite human beings, a colleague of mine at ESPN. You may know him as an NBA analyst, Mr. Tom Penn, but you love him because he is the president and co-owner of LAFC, which is to begin play in 2018 with a brand new stadium, right, Tom?
How about that?
Huh? How is that stadium development coming around?
Hello, greetings. Yeah, we're building right down the street, the side of the old sports arena. It's gone, tore it down, and building a brand new soccer-specific
So they're digging.
stadium. They're digging.
Wow.
It's cool.
That's awesome.
Fun.
And they're going to be up and running spring of 18?
Spring of 18, yeah. So look forward to hosting everybody down there soon.
All right. I thought you'd bring me a scarf or something, but.
So am I now doing this? I'm going to introduce our panelists. Come on out, folks. We have an all-star studded group that's going to focus on collaboration, impact, really elevating things via our association with sports. I'm going to start with Kelly Cheeseman, who's the COO of AEG Sports and the LA Kings. They also own the LA Galaxy, which is a team we're going to compete against. But Kelly's a giant in the operational world of sports. He puts together partnerships, sits on their foundation. They gave away $1 million recently with the Kings and have just really written the book on how to have an impact in sports. Next to Kelly's Caitlin Morris from a place you may have heard of, Nike. She's the North American Senior Director of Community Impact at Nike, and how cool is that? If you think about what that brand can do and is doing for the world, we appreciate all that you're doing. I'm going to skip you for a second because we got to finish with you. Sherrie Deans from the NBA Players Association Foundation. Think about the impact you can have giving away dollars on behalf of the 450 players and then working with the 450 players in terms of what they do. A lot of exciting things going on at the Players Association, including the negotiation of a new collective bargaining agreement that's about that close apparently, and then the wealth and power of that small group of people and the impact they're having is great. And Benita, Fitzgerald, Mosley, how do we not finish with our gold medalist, 110-meter hurdle, or 100-meter hurdle medalist in 1984 in this city? Think about that, let that settle. But that's not what we're here to talk about, because she's making an enormous impact and has for the good of sport with the Laureus Foundation here in the USA. She's the CEO. So we'd like to get into any and all of what we're up to. My first question's an open one. What about the impact of sports that it has? The ability, the leverage point that we all sit at in our own way. Just reflect on that for a second.
So, as you mentioned, I represent 450 of the most elite athletes in the world, no offense to the other sports. But I love the guys that I represent, and people watch what they do at every level. They watch what they wear, how they walk, what they think about things. And I mean, if anyone remembers a time when LeBron tweeted about Flo on the Geico commercial and people just went crazy because he represents progressive or something. I mean, it really is a unique position that they're in. It's also very stressful to be in that position where all you want to do is play the sport that you love, but everybody wants you to talk about everything in the world. You know, so we had a game opener on Monday. A lot of the games started, and everyone was sitting on bated breath to figure out, are they going to stand? Are they going to kneel? What are they going to do? Are they going to wear their jerseys? Are they not going to wear their jerseys? And I watched a lot of really young athletes, but really young men, most of them personally impacted by the issues that we're talking about, grapple with how they make a statement, grapple with what they do past the moment of protest. And so I think we're in a wonderful position in our country and in our world. They understand the weight that's on them. They take that sense of responsibility seriously, and we're happy to support them as they try to figure it out, because we're all in the same place, right? We really don't know how to fix it, but we know we can do it together.
Yeah. Benita, how about your experience as an athlete?
Well, as an athlete, definitely, I understand the power of sport to have changed my life. I came from a middle-class upbringing. Both parents were educators, but they also understood that not only is education important for kids, but they understood extracurricular activities were as well. They introduced me to all kinds of different sports, as well as music, and it really encouraged me to obviously get good grades in school, but to balance that with the activities I was doing outside of the classroom. Encouraged me even through the gymnastics fiasco and the majorettes fiasco and the softball fiasco until I found my calling in track and field in the 7th grade, thanks to my gymnastics coach who, you know how when you have a 2-year-old and they're into something they haven't been, and you kind of redirect them. My gymnastics coach redirected me to a sport for which I was much better suited. And really discovering that in myself, even through the trials and tribulations of not being very good in some of those sports, discovering in me, what this tall, 5'10", lanky body was good for, really was a process of self-discovery for me and a building of my self-confidence from being a girl who was relatively shy, good in the classroom, but really socially a little bit awkward, to being someone who throughout middle school and high school was a leader in my school, on my team, and ultimately now for an organization that I really truly believe in, Laureus Sport for Good Foundation. Sport for Good, we have a wonderful founding patron in Nelson Mandela from the 2001 Laureus World Sport Awards, who said that sport has the power to change the world. And we really believe that. It's a great hook for kids to get them interested. Who doesn't want to play outside and play sports on a gym floor? But we understand that it's coupled with the excitement of playing sport is really, as these kids talked about in many panels before, having that trusting adult, a coach that's really been trained not only in the X's and O's in sport, but really understanding that they've got this life in their hands that they're responsible for helping to nurture. And the second thing is having a program paired with that sport that also helps them in some of the key areas that we know sport can help, which is education, health and wellness, employability, and social and community cohesion. And so that's where our focus is, both locally and nationally. And sport is having the power to change lives now. 375,000 kids just in the last 3 years through Laureus, and so we're excited about that.
That's great.
Yeah, from Nike's perspective, what's interesting for us is we agree that investing in sport can be one of the most economically efficient things that we can do to transform societies. And as Benita just mentioned, it's part of the conversation around better health, it's part of the conversation around better education, it's part of the conversation around strong communities. But what happens is we have each of those conversations in a silo, and in each of them then sport gets marginalized. And until we start talking about the collective benefit of sport, we're not going to get people to invest in it the way we need them to. The second thing is just sort of how do we broaden the definition of sport? When we first started this work about 5 years ago on sort of broadly taking on access to sport, we sat with a group of academic experts and nonprofits, and one of the things they said to us is, we're happy for you to talk about access to sport as long as you redefine sport for society. And what they meant was move from it feeling like something that was exclusive and just for the most competitive to something that was broader in reach. And that's part of what's so exciting to hear people talk about skate coming into the Olympics, or people defending cheer as a sport, because it's true. You can run, jump, kick, swim your way to whatever future you want to get to, but we have to think of sport in a broader term.
Tough to follow. Tom, first of all, thanks for calling me a giant. Nobody's ever called me a giant in my life when you're 5'7" in sports. I think for us, similar to what Sherrie is saying, when we're on the team side and we're local here with the Kings and the Galaxy and some of our teams around the world, we try to look at, beyond the fact that our goal is to win games and win championships and grow our revenues, we have to have an impact in the community. And if we don't have that, we aren't really giving our athletes the opportunity to shine. I mean, Luke as our leader, Chris Klein as our leader at the Galaxy, these are two athletes that when they were on the field or on the ice, they never said no to being in the community. And that makes a long-term impact on actually growing our teams and our organization. So it's meaningful for us. I think it's a foundation of our company as AEG. We want to have a meaningful impact in every community that we are in around the world. And if we fall short of that, I think we fall short of what we're trying to accomplish. So
Well, you guys do. You impact everywhere. I mean, think about where we're sitting here at the heart of LA Live. The transformation of downtown Los Angeles began with Phil Anschutz and AEG's belief in this place. It was a scary place. And it really was. I mean, I'm hearing and learning this more because what we're doing with our stadium is somewhat similar, investing in an area that could use some revitalization, and it will come, but it's just remarkable what's happened here, and that's just an example of the many things AEG has done. The leverage point of sports is what's so fascinating for me. We're all small businesses, really, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, what's Nike's revenues? Nike's revenues is how many billions, and a well-run sports team, it might be 100, 200 million. It shouldn't have this kind of position of a change position, but we do. And I'm curious, the big theme here is cooperation, collaboration, partnership. Let's spend some time. First of all, what does that word mean to you, and how do you put it in place to use the leverage of sports to make a difference?
Yeah, I'll start because you're right. When you've got the revenues the size of Nike, people just sort of think, well, if only Nike would do X, wouldn't everything be better?
I guarantee you, everybody in this room is thinking that right now.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And I think part of what we learned as we went back and sort of looked at how do you get sport to thrive in a world where it's becoming increasingly less physically active. I mean, this is the least active generation in history. And we've got to turn that around. And that's the only way we're going to see sport thrive is by people moving again. And so for us, collaboration was first, well, do we all understand the fact base? And can we sort of share common messages? So can we get aligned on, hey, the world's not moving, it's costing us billions, and there are just a few simple things we need to do to turn that around. And one is creating early positive experiences in sport and physical activity for kids. It's not enough to say that kids have to move, kids have to have fun doing it. And my favorite example of the nostalgic childhood in which I grew up was the PE class of the rope, where everyone sat in a circle and you waited your 5 minutes to climb the rope. Well, you know what? That's not a very good use of 60 minutes when each kid gets 1 2-minute climb, if they're lucky, on the rope. And it used to be kids moved more and had more opportunities in their community to move, and you could kind of afford to squander the time. You can't squander it that way anymore. So when I think about collaboration, part of it's us all being aligned in the room on what we think good looks like and how are we going to get there. And then the second piece, I think, is how do you bring together the assets and what you do best in a certain way. So Nike is known for its marketing prowess and our ability to communicate. So part of what we've tried to do in the field is just sort of simplify the message and make it easy to understand. We're not doctors. We're not PhDs. And we look to other experts in the field to really bring that evidence base. And then how do we use that to further what we can with our assets?
So here at Laureus, we've been, for the past couple of years, starting kind of a pilot program, if you will, our Laureus Model City Initiative. And it really consists of 3 pillars. We decided that, if we were really going to have the impact that we wanted to have, we needed to see if we could do that in a more long-term, place-based, collective impact type of model. And so we started with New Orleans. One of our partners is Mercedes-Benz USA, and they obviously have a stadium, the Dome there in New Orleans, but it's certainly a community with a lot of underserved youth that could certainly use sport to help change their lives. And so about a year ago, almost 2 now, January 2015, we started working with several partners. We gave out 6 grants to 6 different organizations that are committed to using sport to really improve their community. Those individual organizations form a steering group to a larger coalition of 20 plus organizations that cross sectors from government to business, education, wellness, and health. And then that coalition has determined which shared goals they want to have, how they're going to track that data. They've really built a strong collaboration among themselves. If one needs buses or fields, the other one has them, they share them. If one has a connection in the mayor's office or within the education system, they share those connections. And we've really seen a boost now, just among the 6 organizations that we fund, of 10,000 additional kids in just 1 year served by those organizations. So we've helped build their capacity, helped build their staff, helped build their ability to raise funding outside of Laureus, and that goes to the collaborative coalition partners as well. We're moving now, after learning about how to be a backbone organization in this kind of a context, we've actually been doing a study for the past several months about, what does it look like? What are we doing right, wrong? What lessons learned if we want to do this in other cities? And one of the things we realized is that we have a person on the ground there. It was important that she have some understanding of the community needs, and then secondly, really build the trust of those folks in that coalition, and that we listen to what their needs are, listen to how they want to do it, and not have a real prescription for how to do that work in the New Orleans community. And we're taking those lessons learned and looking now, the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, the Falcons Stadium will open next fall. And so the west side of Atlanta, which is in the shadows of that stadium, is really one of the most blighted communities in America. And so we're working with them and with some community partners to do a community landscape assessment and really understand how we can help there as well. So these coalitions, this collaboration within a city, really using sport to help change the fabric of the city, help make that city stronger, and using youth and creating a better process for them to participate in sport is really starting to pay off.
I just want to add to that because New Orleans is a great example of collaboration also sort of between Nike and Laureus, where Nike had gone in and invested heavily in rebuilding a park in New Orleans East, and Laureus and Nike were funding one of the same national partners around coaches and coach training. And we want to see sustainability in that city too. We want to see the hardware, sort of the park, match the software of the community organizations. But Nike is not the right organization to play that backbone role. And being aligned on values, though, around coach training, sustainability of organizations, and building that really allowed us to sort of say, all right, somebody excellent has that covered. And we can play a contributing role, but we don't have to lead. And figuring out sometimes just sort of how you partner and who's got the right skill sets for which role is really helpful.
And I think in this case, you've got 2 funders with similar, goals and ambitions working together toward a common goal. And like you said, to really ensure that long after Laureus is gone, maybe 5 or 6 years from now, in really putting the kind of funding in that we are, that coalition can stay intact, that those facilities and that software, if you will, can really sustain that program.
They say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Ooh, say that again.
I can't.
That was good.
If you missed it.
If you want to go, what is it?
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I'm a sports union, and a lot of people will come and get me completely confused with the NBA, right? We don't own the stadiums. We don't own the TV rights. I can't get you free tickets. Like, really, don't ask me. I buy my tickets like everybody else. And so there's the only way that we can support programming, the only way that we can support our players in their effort in community is through collaboration. It just doesn't work any other way. And you also have to acknowledge that, we have players that play in 30 cities, and they're from the most, some of them, the tiniest places you've ever heard of. Right. I was speaking to a player on Monday, and he said, I'm from somewhere in North Carolina, I can't even remember the place, has a population of 286 people. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even fathom that. They're from all over, and in so many instances, they want to be local, they want to tell all the people that supported them all along the way that they haven't forgotten the sacrifice that was made to get them there. And so you really have to approach your work with a sense of a generosity of spirit, with the belief that the people that are in communities know what's best for them. And sometimes it's easy to get preoccupied with your own goals and forget about what really matters. But I think one thing that came out really early in my work with the players is I realized that so many of them started playing other sports. Like this is a very different generation we're being raised in. We talked about it in the panel before, where kids get locked into a sport at 7, 8 years old. You know, I mean, Chris Paul, your local, my boss, and you know your local hero here, was quarterback of his football team until high school, and point guard. Right? That couldn't happen today. You couldn't be both things. And so we started to realize, and so many of our players realized, that the kid that isn't great can't find a place to play. And it used to be that basketball didn't have the challenges of softball and hockey. We're the cheapest sport out there. All you need is a ball and a hoop. And what we're starting to find out that the courts that used to be open all the time when we were kids are now chained and locked. The lights don't come on. You know, they don't let them play in school. And how did we get there? How did we get to the place where we can't leave these places open and safe for our kids to be? And so we've really been focused on taking those locks off the gates. Do you remember in my neighborhood, I grew up in Miami, there used to be like you couldn't bring your bike onto the court, so there was like a pole and a little opening,
Right.
and you'd come in. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
They don't look like that anymore. They are completely locked up. And that we've got to trust our kids more. It's got to be that the playground becomes the safest place to play. We cannot be arguing about recess. I mean, Playworks folks are here. I used to sit on the board of Playworks. You know, this is a social justice issue. When we're arguing over whether or not kids should be allowed to play recess, we're way off track as a country. And those are things we can't dispute anymore. So there's got to be, we're wondering why kids aren't playing. I mean, my part-time job is the team mom of my son's nationally ranked youth football team, the Harlem Jets, all because of me. You'd be surprised at how difficult it is to work with the school to get the kids to participate, because they start at 7, they're done at 6:45, and they've got Saturday school. Like, how can you participate in a sport when that's how your time is being spent? And they're having to make choices that they shouldn't have to make. And so we've got to work together to figure that out.
You don't have free tickets, but he does. You know. So
True.
But I'm
Sometimes
curious,
too many.
what do you guys, give an example of something, a collaboration, a partnership that's worked?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, it really, for us, Tom, as you talked about earlier, I mean, we are a small business, and when it comes to our teams, and it's critical to have collaboration for the programs that we have goals to create to be successful. I mean, the most recent one that we've announced with the YMCA, where we made thanks, you guys. We made a 5-year contribution for $1 million, which was, you know, really as a result of raising money with our fans over the last, number of years. It doesn't. Our goal there is to create a street hockey program or a ball hockey program that gets kids introduced to the sport at a grassroots level at all 26 LAYs. But it doesn't work without the collaboration with an organization like the YMCA we know it's going to be in great hands. And they have the coaches and the resources and the facilities that we can continue to work with partners on to help develop those facilities and those programs, and then coach the coaches and teach them about the sport and teach kids what leadership means and what teamwork means. And if we try to do that on our own, we just don't have the resources to try to execute that across the city. So collaboration is critical for us. This is an expansive city. It's an expensive city as well. And we have to have great teamwork to make those programs successful. I think the other piece there too is like facilities. A lot of cities locally are coming to us, and they want to have great facilities. They want to fix up the fields. With the droughts in the last number of years here in LA, you go to some of these fields that are run by, various parks and recs organizations across the city, they're really struggling to keep these alive. So to bring those back to life takes some private and public partnerships to make it successful. And we're happy to collaborate on that with various cities to build facilities, to rebuild parks. And of course, our brand comes into that. But that's great. We can bring our athletes there and have impact and partner together to really make a sustainable impact in the community.
Curious, take it a step deeper when we talk about a partner and a partnership. What do you look for in a partner? When do you know it's right? So for me, we all bring different things to the table. Some bring financial capital. That's what everybody's always thinking. Where can we get the money? Then there's the intellectual capital, just the ability the know-how to get things done. Then the reputational capital some people bring. Just your name or your presence or your brand alone can make a difference. I always look for something complementary, obviously, but I'm wondering, what if any of you take us through a story of partnership or what you remember when you knew it was right and why?
Okay. I think, I've been on panels about partnership before, and I'm going to just sort of say, not every partnership, you're not in all of them for the same reasons. So for example, sometimes we do want to partner for scale. We had an issue or a challenge around partnering with one of our categories where they wanted to be able to have an activation platform for consumers and be able to use their digital platforms to do that. In order to use our digital platforms, we had to have a partner that was a national partner. Okay. And so in that one, I was looking for a national partner who was willing to had an innovation mindset, because Nike generally doesn't fund core operating budget. We like to look at sort of how are we going to move the needle. We tend to be we're kind of picky and kind of a pain in the butt, in all honesty. We usually look at how are we going to move the needle on a particular aspect of how that program works. And we wanted somebody who was just sort of willing to grow with us. And kind of, frankly, organizations are not organizations. Organizations are made of people. And there's no denying that there's a kind of a personal mesh in how you work together. But that's very different from the work that we do in East LA, where that's about how are we connecting one of our greatest assets, our employees who are dedicated in that community door, back to small, hyper-local community organizations that may serve 50 kids, may serve 100, dealing with kids in a square mile radius or a 5-block radius from where they live. So not all partnerships, you don't come to all of them for the same reasons, but you do have a certain intentionality around each one.
If I can share one that has been very fruitful for us, we opened up the Science of Hockey at the Discovery Cube Los Angeles, which is up at Hanson Dam in Sylmar, and we're 2 years into that partnership now. That one was unique in the fact that it's a children's science museum, and the Ducks had a Science of Hockey down at the Cube down in Orange County, and we knew about it and we'd been there, but we didn't really understand the foundation around what they were trying to accomplish there. And when we got involved with the LA branch, we found out their impact and what their goals are around STEM education, and allowing kids to come out and be a part of field trips there, and the impact that it has in that local community there, which is not, it needs help. That community needs help. And what they were building up there was very unique in the fact that it is a destination for kids to learn about science and education. And we were able to be created the Science of Hockey, and kids can learn about, friction and ice and the weight of the Stanley Cup and, all of those things. But also we were able to be kind of recess in their education process up there, which was great for us. There are about 300,000 kids or total attendees are going through the facility now on an annual basis. About 50,000 kids are going through there on field trips. But bigger there, we were able to get exposed to Hanson Dam and the sports facilities that are up there, and start having a collaborative conversation about what can we do broader here? How can we, fix the fields up here? How can we build a facility? It's something that Renata and I are, having conversations with them now. And it's a great organization with the Cube, has a lot of political influence behind it as well, and we actually think that we can make it happen. So it's going to take, it's going to take collaboration. It's going to take, a land deal to come together, but it's also going to take, people that really want to have an impact on what they want to do around sport, but also around education. So that one was one that made a lot of sense for us.
So like as I said, we were working in Atlanta now, really at the beginning stages of creating an initiative there. And when we talked to Mercedes about embarking upon this, when I started in February as CEO of Laureus USA, and I think I was at the headquarters in their new headquarters in Atlanta in early March. But it's been a really great opportunity to learn more about the community, but we really needed someone to kind of introduce us to the folks on the West Side. It's a very interesting community of several different, very different neighborhoods. And so just to kind of walk in there and say, ta-da, Laureus is here and we want to help you and aren't we awesome and we want to bring sport. And they'd kind of look at us like we were growing 2 or 3 heads, we were told. And so we needed to kind of go in there gently. And so we partnered with an organization called Families First. They've been in Atlanta and working for 125 years. They're a social service organization, which you probably wouldn't think a sports organization, social service, but they don't have a sport aspect to their programming in serving the families that they serve. And they do foster care. They do, again, a bunch of myriad of social services, but sport wasn't included in those. And of course, they know the community like the back of their hand, and they know the leaders in that community and can really help us understand those needs. And so it's been a really fruitful partnership. It's only been about 6 months so far. They're the ones that are spearheading the development of this community landscape report, conducting surveys. We're doing some kind of introductory events. We did a Prep a Scholar event where we gave out 300 backpacks back in July. We did a coaches convening where we trained about 20 or 30 coaches. We're doing a day of sport in November. And all along the way, we're adding value to the neighborhood, but we're also, it's a collection point for a lot of data that Families First is using to help us develop this report. So, again, like Caitlin was saying, you have different partnerships for different reasons, and this is one that's certainly helping us have a smoother entree into the Atlanta community.
Can I just sort of add, I also think there is a difference between binary partnerships, where you've got one partner and that's how you mean to go on, versus trying to tackle big issues where you think you're going to need a lot of people at the table. And one of the things that we've probably learned over the past few years is kind of, it used to be, okay, if we start with our organization, everyone else will just come on board. And I hate to tell you the answer is no, they don't. And I think one of the things that is hard about partnership is if you need a lot of people to join, at sort of at what level, how many people do you have to get at the table before you start to say, okay, we have enough to go. We did well with that on Let's Move Back to Schools, where we had implementation organizations, training organizations, and measurement and evaluation organizations all come on at the same time. Whereas I've been in other partnerships where you start with one organization, you fund them thinking other funders will come. And if you don't start with them, it's pretty hard to get them on board later. And at least that's been my experience. I'd love to hear from other panelists around that, but just in terms of what it takes to make a really strong partnership.
No, I think that's true. I also, I think we misuse the word partnership. People throw it out all the time. They come, I'd love to partner with the union on whatever, and it's usually not a partnership they're proposing. It's a hijacking. It's I want you to pay for it, get the player. It's usually LeBron that they want. I want it to be at your facility. Partnership is about both groups bringing their values, their treasure, and their needs to the table. And so I think you have to be really, really clear about who is a good partner for you. I may not be a good partner for you based on the assets that I have, the reach that I have, and what your objectives are. And I think people are mistaken if they don't think we know when you approach us that there's been very little thought put into what the partnership could look like. And so I think we have to be a little bit more disciplined when we're thinking about the partnerships and the end goal that we truly want. You know, what is it that we really want to happen? And then not just pick anyone, but pick a group of partners that are really going to advance that goal. And that's how, you know, that's how I move forward. I'm never going to approach someone, although I would love Nike to do everything with me. If I can't meet Nike in the same place and bring value, then I'm never going to walk up to them and say we should partner, because that's just not fair. And the relationship will never go far. So I think we all have to remember that and really do a strong assessment of what it is that you're bringing to the table and how you're going to be able to hold up your end of the bargain. Because in the end, it's just like any marriage, right? Both people have to be willing to commit fully. And if one side is, if there's an imbalance, it's never going to work.
I think sometimes it takes a little risk there too to create something that you believe in, to expose it to a partnership as well. I mean, there's a lot of times that, you know, there's certain programs that we've created that just had a passion behind something that we wanted to accomplish, and it took us maybe taking a loss leader on it for a period of time to expose a partner like Nike or Bauer into our Little Kings program, where we just had the passion to get more kids the accessibility to play hockey for a low rate, and now we have great partners on it, and the entire league is behind it as well, and now has created that program that started with just the Kings and the Penguins, and now all 30 and soon to be 31 teams will have the same program that's funded by the league and the Industry Growth Fund that came out of the last CBA. So that took, you know, it takes the wherewithal to really kind of, you know, put your stake in the ground to take that risk, and now, you know, partners get exposed to it because they'll believe in what you're actually accomplishing.
Start small, make it simple, make it work, prove it. I like that. You started on something which was my next thought. What are the mistakes you've seen or made? And I made about 10 this week, I heard. Talked with my wife, I made a lot more. But no, what are the mistakes you've seen in partnership? What do you look for that causes you to say no that might cause anybody in this room to learn from that?
So I think to Sherrie's point, not every relationship is a partner relationship. Sometimes we are a grantor to a grantee, and that's a little bit different. And how close we get to that relationship. Sometimes we're sort of letting 1,000 flowers bloom, and we're you know, giving them the resources, but we're not really in it all the time. And then there are other partnerships where we are talking every week, if not every day, some weeks, and we are really in it. And maybe one of the learnings I've had from that is language can mean different things to different people. And you know, you may describe your expectations to the opposite party, and you're both smiling. And as my father once put it, same bed, different dreams. So you know, it's like so just you got to be really in the detail around what you're intending, because people may hear it a little bit differently.
I think one of the things we learned in New Orleans through this evaluation process of being the backbone organization is that, I mentioned it a little earlier, but just being really trying to be prescriptive. I'm the leader, I'm the one that's, you know, running this thing, so therefore I get to tell all y'all what to do. And that's not really the best way to get the best out of them. You know, you have to really understand that this collaboration or partnership or group of 20 plus organizations, or however many you bring together, should have the freedom to, you know, express their own ideas. And you need to create an environment where that is not only you know, takes place, but is really expected of everybody, and that you don't come in with some preconceived ideas about how everything should go. Now, you might set some expectations, some collective goals about where you want to go, but how you get there, if it's a group of people that are kind of equal partners in this effort, everybody should have a voice and trust that that we're all going to work, you know, for the common good, and hopefully have a way to track that progress and impact together.
What do you guys think about, shifting gears, girls' participation in sports? Some of the data we've seen and the great statistics that LA84's come up with. How do you feel about where it is where it needs to go, and both the challenges, the opportunities.
So I run a men's league, so this is a little awkward, but I'm a woman, and I think I'm proud to say that the union is run by a woman, the first woman to ever run a major sports league.
She's doing a great job.
She is. And 4 of the 8 senior managers of the union are women. And I think in addition to talking about what happens on the court, on the field, we also have to talk about what happens in the back office. Who's in leadership, how we get things done, who manages things. There's opportunities there too. We also work with the WNBA. Those women are a force. And so I think just as we're trying to talk about exposure to sports, it's unlikely that you're going to end up in these jobs if you didn't start playing at some point, if you weren't exposed to the sport, if you weren't a manager on a team, if you weren't a fan. And so I don't want to be the last woman to ever have this job. And if we really truly feel that way about leadership in sports, in the jobs that pay, then I think we have to be really serious about letting girls feel that they belong in sports. They deserve to be there.
There's so many studies. Ernst & Young has done one recently. The Women's Sports Foundation has done some that really talks to and speaks to women leaders, women managers, and the percentage of those, a high percentage of those in the 90s that played sports when they were younger. And so I just actually went to my last board meeting for the Women's Sports Foundation. I roll off at the end of the year. But we really decided to align not only the opportunities for girls to play sport, but those lessons that they learn on the playing field that translate to them later in life being successful off the playing field. And as Sherrie was saying, those of us who have found leadership opportunities in sport or in business in general, a lot of us did learn those lessons on the playing field. And so I think it's important to have those equal opportunities. It's also important to have women leaders in sport that girls can emulate and look up to, whether they be coaches or administrators. And one of the recent studies that the foundation, Women's Sports Foundation did is called Beyond the X's and O's. And it really shows the dearth of women coaches of women's sports that has gone down with the advent of Title IX, which obviously opened up doors for people like myself to go to school on a full college scholarship and play sport. Also, unfortunately, we've seen a decline from 90-some% of the women coaching girls sports to now it's under 50% actually. And so we want to ensure that women get to play, girls get to play sport at a community level, at the school level, college level, and beyond. But that we want to see women leaders on both coaching as well as in the back office.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nike as a business runs what we call a category offense. So we have a basketball business, a running business, a soccer business, and we have a women's business. Women's is not a category. Women's is half the people around the world. But we do that because we kind of recognize internally we have to be intentional about the women's business, and we have to force ourselves to keep the eye on the ball. And I would say that the exact same thing is true around getting girls to play in the community. I don't think the research that we supported for LA84 to do said anything that would shock anyone about girls' level of participation. What it did do was set a baseline so that everyone in this community can say we are committed to moving the needle and having a different answer 2 years from now. Right. And that's really, I think, the ask is that our goal is to move the unmoving. So it means the first 100 kids who show up for your program may not be the first 100 you need to reach. And we've learned from experience that when we focus on girls' participation with a community partner, we get it. And when we take our eye off the ball and we stop worrying about it, the numbers drop. And so I think for me it's about, all right, it's not a new fact, so what's the new action we're going to do?
I think we see, as teams and brands, we see a lot of responsibility and giving young women the opportunity to play with girls and giving them the opportunity to have teams. So we've had a large injection of young girls come into our programs and our youth programs, and we saw with our Junior Kings program in the last couple of years a group of girls that wanted to have their own team. And it was being underserved, and we grabbed it and created a new program last year called the LA Lions, and gave them their opportunity to play together at all ages. And now it's a budding program that actually kicked the bejesus out of my nephew's team from San Diego last week, which I was very proud of. I use it as a nice lesson for him because, I told him that's Uncle Kelly's team, so you gotta come more prepared next time. But what we've seen and we've heard from the mothers and the fathers from that program is that these girls have gained so much more confidence, being able to be with their classmates and to be with other girls, and now they can grow up, and we will grow that program, and we want them to go on and get college scholarships. There's a lot of great college hockey programs, and we have college hockey, women's college hockey players that actually work for us, and that's the opportunity that we give them. But we don't necessarily need to see them growing up playing with boys, and I think we need to see that responsibility across all of our sports teams around the world.
That's great. So I'd like to thank the panelists for the difference they're making in their respective orbits, in their respective positions of sort of power, influence, and leverage. So thank you for all you are individually doing. But I'd like to further thank each and every one of you for the difference you're making and you will make. You're here for a reason. You're involved in some noble effort around this cause. And as I look at the young in age and the young of heart and the young of spirit, each of us has this ability to grow and do more and make a difference in our own way. And I wanted to do a whole nother question on this as to what you would say is your message to everyone to be able to do a difference, but we're out of time. So keep doing what you're doing. Be more vocal and more vigilant about it, because as somebody who now runs an organization, the best ideas come from within, from where you least expect them. You just got to have the courage and the passion to take it and voice it, and then it bubbles up, right? And great stuff happens. So thank you for what you're doing. We'll go fast to lunch, right? And we'll go far together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah. Hi. Sherrie, that was awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Benita. Good job, Mr. Penn.
Thank you.
All right, it is lunchtime, indeed. And so lunch is going to be served directly behind you with a buffet. We're going to have about 30 minutes, and then we're going to start our next panel again, which is all our Rio Olympians. We have a tremendous panel in store for you to close out the session. That will start at 1:15. So go ahead and go enjoy lunch.